Hello, and welcome to the Millennial Mastermind Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Mulvey. If you're a millennial looking for actionable advice and a proven formula on how to build the life of your dreams, then this is the show for you. Each week, I'll be connecting with inspiring guests who will be sharing their wisdom on how to reach success. So if you're ready to take your life to the next level, buckle up and enjoy the ride. Hey y'all, welcome to the show. Today, I'm chatting with Steve Benson. Steve brings a wealth of career experience to the table. Prior to starting Badger Maps, the #1 sales route planner in the Apple App Store in 2016, Steve earned his MBA from Stanford and held sales roles at IBM, HP, and Google, where he was recognized as Google Enterprise's top sales executive in 2009. We discuss how to create a company culture where employees want to come to work, the impact his sales experience has had on his success in business, Steve's calculated decision-making process, which is just totally in my wheelhouse. It involves Excel and spreadsheets and all that fun stuff. We also talk about Steve's advice to the millennials that he mentors and much, much more. And one other thing I just wanted to quickly call out before we dive into this episode is that with the latest iOS update, Apple has finally made it intuitive to leave a rating or review within their podcasting app. So instead of having to search for the podcast and figure out what the heck you're doing, you just go to the podcast that you're listening to, whether it's in your subscriptions or you're listening to it the first time, scroll to the bottom of that podcast page and you have the option right there to leave a rating or review. So now that it's so easy, I would love if you guys could go in there and drop a quick rating or review to help others find this show. It just feeds into Apple's algorithm, so it gets the word out there and it makes it easier for others to find it. So with that, let's go ahead and dive into this episode with Steve Benson. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. Very excited to bring on another CEO and founder today who has done some really cool things and has some very interesting experience both in the corporate world and then going out on his own and starting a really neat business. So with that, I am excited to welcome Steve Benson to the show. Steve, how's it going?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me on the show today, Brad.
Thanks for making the time. We were just chatting that you're calling in from halfway around the globe right now over in Spain. So it's early here, but afternoon there. So it works out perfect timing wise.
That's right. Yeah, we have a team over here in this office, and so I end up coming here, 3 times a year or something for 2 weeks-ish at a time. So, this is one of those times. So
not a bad way to work in business. So to kick things off, would you mind just taking a step back and giving a little bit of your background, touching on how your career started and how you worked towards your entrepreneurial venture, and then explaining a little bit about Badger Maps and what you guys are doing?
Sure. So, how did I get started in all this? Well, so, after college, like I'm sure a lot of your listeners, I was really just interested in getting some gainful employment so I could, eat and stuff. So, right after college, I packed up a U-Haul and moved out to California, to the Bay Area. And I grew up in Chicago and went to college in Wisconsin. And so then I found a job in insurance and I worked there for like 3 years. Then I went to business school, and then after business school, I got into technology and I started my career in sales. So worked at IBM for a year, and then I went to, and that was in a sales role. And then I went to a company called Autonomy that ended up getting purchased by HP. And then after that, I went to Google. And I spent 4 years or so there, and I was working a bunch of their software products as well. I was still selling software, and then when I was there, I that's when I kind of got the entrepreneurial bug and had I kind of saw a problem that I had because I was a field salesperson, so I was very familiar with the problems that a field salesperson would have, and then I set out to I kind of understood the technology around what would solve that problem, so kind of mobile devices, ubiquitous internet connectivity on those devices, and mapping, a mapping API that you could build things on top of. Um, so kind of those three trends kind of allowed me to see, well, I could really solve an important problem here with technology, and that's how Badger Maps kind of got started.
So I have to imagine that there's a correlation between going to school in Wisconsin and the name Badger Maps.
Yes, I went to Madison, so I am technically a Badger.
I love it. I love it. So when you took that journey that led you to a lot of different large corporations, gave you some really cool experience, especially at your last position there at Google, were there certain things that you learned there that helped you really to be successful then when you went on to start your own business?
Yeah, I think working at Google, you see so many great examples of how to run a company in a really good way. Culturally, especially, I think I learned a lot of things about how to have a company running in such a way that people are really happy about working there and really excited about the company. There's so much passion that people have that work at Google, and I think it's really because they go out of their way to treat people well. Granted, it helps when it's easier to treat people well when you're really, really wealthy, which they are. They have they have some great businesses over there at Google. So, they've done really well.
So that's a great point. I mean, obviously, the culture of a company is so vital, and you're going to have a much different culture going from a Fortune 500 company to the startup. So how did you try to develop your culture then? Because it sounds like most of your background was working for very large, well-known companies. So I imagine that it's a challenge trying to mirror some of those aspects when going straight into that startup type environment. So what did you do when you were trying to develop the culture at Badger?
Yeah, we definitely didn't mimic a lot of the things that you would do at a big company, just because that wouldn't work. I think you kind of have to figure out on your own what the type of culture you want, and a lot of it has to do with the people that are involved. We've tried to, and there's a trove of information out there on people's, there's a ton of opinions on how to build a great culture, and a lot of them are really, really smart. And so there's places you can go to learn and things you can read to learn about how to create a culture that people really enjoy being there, enjoy being a part of the team, enjoy what they're doing, grow in their careers. I think a lot of the most unique and different things that we do just kind of happened organically. Like there were just a bunch of people that wanted to create a great culture, and we were able to just by making sure we were very conscious about making a place that people enjoyed being and that they would want to wake up in the morning and go to. I think that was focusing on that and kind of thinking about what we could do to make that happen. Some of those unique things that we have done, that's where they came from.
Could you share what some of those unique things look like?
Sure, yeah. So I guess we're a very transparent culture. So I try to make sure everyone can. Anything's up for grabs in terms of what questions people can ask, or get an understanding of the business, or like it's very transparent and open in that regard. But I think a lot of companies, especially small companies today, are doing that. That's kind of That's pretty normal at this point, I think. Although it's harder even at a bigger company. It's harder even if you're trying to be transparent. It's hard to even have someone understand it. Like the CFO of Google can't sit down and have a chit chat about Google's finances because it's going to be over everyone's head. It's just so complex. But ours are pretty simple. so so yeah, I guess one 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 thing that we do that is very different, I think, is we have a lot of cross training and we have people jump in and out of different areas. So someone might be in HR and sales, or someone might do marketing and sales, or someone might do, engineering and product work, or, IT and product management. We we have all these things that need to get done, and we don't necessarily limit who's going to do it to what silo in a business it would traditionally belong to. Instead, every Monday morning we have a 15-minute meeting where everybody talks about the projects that they want to get done that week and what they're focused on, and anyone's kind of able to jump in on anyone else's product or project, and anyone can also, and people who are running a project, or they can ask people to jump on it. So that gets people out of their, we're very unsiloed, I guess. That gets people involved in different parts of the business, and therefore people understand what's going on there better, which is really important, right? Like, it's really important that the engineers understand why the product team wants them to build this next feature, and the product team understands why the marketing team, is going to be able to find more people that want the product if they bring that feature to market, and the marketing team needs to understand why the sales team is going to be able to sell more of it if they have that specific thing. So there's, a company like this is like a factory, and a lot of places keep people very siloed. I try to shuffle it up and have people understand all these different areas and dabble a little bit in a whole bunch of different places. So that's pretty unique.
That's a great approach. So you've had a lot of variety in your career, whether it be working at Google, starting your own business, working at other Fortune 500 companies. I would love to get your insights on what you would consider to be the best decision you've made throughout your professional career.
The best decision I've made. I think, the best decision that I made was going into a pure sales role after getting an MBA. So that's not a very common path, right? So like, most people go into more of a consulting or finance or some sort of managing something, but to go into a individual contributor sales role, so much of business, that's what it boils down to. It boils down to being able to make deals happen and influence people to do things, and it's really where the rubber meets the road in so much of business. And that's not a very common path. I think I was one of the only people in my whole class that did that, and never, and definitely, people be like, why are you doing that? Why sales? And it's not, because I don't think it's traditionally as prestigious a role as something like finance or consulting, but because it really taught me so much about how business works, where the rubber meets the road, and I think it accelerated my career, and it's a role that naturally gives leadership opportunities, and kind of grows leaders, and there were, for a lot of reasons, I think that was probably that was probably the best call of my career, and especially certainly a lot of what I would call decisions in my career weren't really decisions. They were kind of obvious. If you have a choice, but it's kind of an obvious choice, then it's not really you can't really pat yourself on the back for having a great decision. Like, going to Stanford for business school wasn't really a great decision on my part. Like, it was a no, like, well, I got into Stanford, I'll go to Stanford. It's kind of a no-brainer. Like you only get a few real actual decisions where you have two directions that you could go, and it's really unclear which one would be better.
So when you are faced with those types of decisions, and have been in the past, Is there a decision-making process that you use, or is it more of just a gut feeling? How do you usually go about making those decisions where the outcome is unclear at that point?
So I like to I kind of I built a spreadsheet a long time ago that I use to kind of weigh decisions, and it's going to be complex to describe, but basically I take all the attributes of something and I give it a value, and then I rate the different directions on each one of those values. So let's just say you were picking what apartment to live in, and so attributes would include what neighborhood is it in, um, what how many bedrooms is it, how much does it cost? Does it have a garage? Does it have a backyard? Do you have to have roommates to live there? Like all the things you can think of that would make up, all the attributes that, the color of the walls, whatever is important to you. And even things that
Sure.
are a little important to you, you can put on there and give them an extremely low weight. Like maybe neighborhood's really important, but school system you don't care about at all because you don't have kids, but maybe you care a little because what if you did, you'd have the option to not move, right? I guess. But the point being, it's got a whole bunch of attributes. You rank those attributes, and then on a scale of 1 to 5 or 1 to 7, whatever you like, and then you gave it each one a point system, and then you can cleanly compare a whole bunch of different directions in kind of in a mathematic way.
I love it. Being an Excel nerd myself, that gets me excited. So I love the strategy there. Kind of on the flip side of the best decision that you've made throughout your career, is there one that stands out as one of the, I say worst decisions you've made, but maybe the biggest learning experience that you've had along the way, that looking back, you may have made a different decision if you had all of the information that came up later in front of you?
Yeah, well, I guess in terms starting a company, there are a bunch of things that you don't know as you start it, right? So I things that you wish you knew, and I'm in retrospect, I'm glad I started it, but there were a lot of learnings that went along with it. A key one is how long everything takes to do things, right? So there's just everything takes twice as long as you think it's going to take, and it's twice as complicated than you think it's going to be because there's no infrastructure wrapped around a company when you're getting it started. So especially if you're used to like a corporate environment, there's a whole team. There are teams of people in place to know how to do all the little things. Like, oh, how does this aspect of finance work? How do you hire and fire someone? What are the laws around that? There's just a million little things that come up. Like, should we be an LLC or a C corp?
Right.
Like, there's all these things that, like, if you have a team, someone on that team, if there's 20 people who are all professionals that do each one of the roles, someone's going to know the answer to each one of these questions. But if you're on your own, it's a lot stranger, I think. So
is there one of those things that pops into your mind that you made a decision around it that turned out to maybe not be the right decision that you would have done differently?
Yeah, well, you always, because everything takes a lot longer than you think it will, and it's a lot harder than you think it's going to be, you always kind of end up, you also need more money than you think you're going to need. So, because everything takes longer. So I definitely, I would have tried harder, I think, and focused more on getting more money earlier, to avoid cash crunches and having to do things that are less, that aren't optimal if you had an appropriate amount of financing.
So do you think that looks more like doing more, building more financing on the front end in terms of raising capital, or do you think that is waiting to start the business until you had enough funds?
Well, it could be a combination of either. It could be being more judicious about spend. Or it could be arranging access to more money up front. Um, this is we were able to basically bootstrap this company, but that's because I had some savings from my time at Google, and we were really we watched every penny pretty closely, but we could have watched them even closer, I think, or we could have been more aggressive about actually raising some more money. We just did a very small friends and family round maybe 5 years ago.
So I read that one of your hobbies is being a life and career coach, especially to the individuals within your organization. Is there one piece of advice that you frequently find yourself giving to millennials that you're coaching through their own professional journey?
Um,
Or another way of phrasing that would be, is there a piece of advice that you would give to yourself when you were in their shoes, when you were, 25 years old, not too far out of college, getting things started on your own journey?
Yeah. So, and I guess that's an accurate thing to say. It's almost a I do a lot of coaching and life and career coaching because it's not a huge company. It's there's 55 people here, but I do a lot of we have an internship program, and so there's a bunch of people coming in and out, right? But and I try to I see an important, if not one of the most important parts of my job as growing the people on the team. So especially as a startup, you often hire people who you hire people for their growth potential, right? Like if you're Google, you can afford to hire the best lawyer who's the most accomplished in a certain field. Whereas if you're a startup that needs a lawyer in that same field, you couldn't afford that guy, and Google already hired him, and or her, and so you're hiring someone more on their potential, and because you think they can figure this out. And so I consider as running a small company, one of the most important things that I do is grow people and help them move along their growth curve and their career path as quickly as possible, so that they can take the roles and take the reins and take leadership roles in the organization as it grows. The most common thing I probably end up telling people early on and talking to people about early on in their careers is, so I draw this I draw three overlapping circles on the board, on a whiteboard, and one is and I'm talking about picking a career path and thinking about your career path. So one of the circles, you can imagine what three circles overlapping looks like. There's one point in the very middle of all of them where they're all touching, and then 3 points where only two of the circles are touching. And so if you've and each one of these circles represents, do you enjoy this activity, this job, the activities, the actual things that you're doing on a job? Do you enjoy that activity? Are you good at that activity? And is there a job in that activity? So as you think of your career, those are the kind of three things. Like, do I like it? Am I good at it? Is there a job in it? And you can imagine in the area where you like it and you're good at it, but there's no jobs in it, that's like a hobby, right? Like that might be fishing or shoe shopping or, I don't know, snowboarding, whatever. I guess there are a few professional snowboarders, but you're probably not going to be that guy right? Or that girl, right? So
right.
Point being, if you enjoy it and you're good at it, but there's no jobs in it, it's a hobby. If you're good at it and there are jobs in it, but you don't enjoy it, that's where most people's careers land. So you don't like it, but you're good at it, and not to crap on lawyers and accountants, but a lot of lawyers and accountants don't like their jobs. They don't enjoy it. They don't enjoy the activity of being a lawyer, which is, sitting at a desk thinking and reading and writing very hard things alone in a room, right? It's often a very nice room in a very nice building, but a lot of people don't enjoy that activity, but they end up as lawyers, or they don't enjoy accounting, the activity that accountants do. They don't enjoy it, but they're good at it. They were trained in it, and there are tons of jobs in that. And so that's another one of these areas where two of the circles overlap, but the third one doesn't, the enjoy. And that's what you're trying to do is be in that one spot where all three of the things overlap when you're picking your career. So you enjoy it, you're good at it, and there's a job in it. And I think not that many people end up there, but there are some, right? And if you're really thoughtful about breaking down, looking at a job and knowing, well, if I do that job, if I take this career path, what am I really doing all day? If I'm going to be a lawyer, what am I really doing all day? Well, this is the activity. Do I enjoy that? Am I good at that? Or could I get good at it? Because sometimes you enjoy something and there are jobs in it, but you're not good at it. But you could learn it if that's an activity you really enjoy doing. If you love working on cars and you're just not that good at it because you haven't done it that much, but when you have done it, you've really enjoyed it. Well, you can learn to work on cars. You can go to mechanic school. That could be your career. If you love marketing and writing, but you just don't have any experience in it, but you'd love a marketing job, you can get an internship in it, and you can work your way up and into a marketing job. I think it's important that people step back and think about the actual activity and are they good at it and do they enjoy it? And most people don't do that, I don't think, when they think about a career. They think about the prestige of the career. They think about the pay of the career. They think about, will their dad think that it's cool? Like, will their friends think it's cool? Whatever. They think about a lot of things, but they don't think about, is this really something I want to do all day and that I'll enjoy doing?
Yeah, and I think that in today's day and age, you're exactly right. There's so many resources available to be able to learn how to do things that you currently do not know how to do. And that is a great Venn diagram just to kind of paint the landscape of what's available out there. And I imagine too, even looking to start a business, you can look at something very similar, having the enjoying it, the good at it, and then, rather than is there a job in it, it becomes more of, is there a market for this? And you can kind of paint the same picture for starting a company.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and that's often pretty competitive too. It's like, I would also put a filter on, am I going to win at this? Because starting a company is more competitive. There are millions of lawyers. There's only one Snapchat. So it's you want to look at them if you're evaluating a company. It's is there a market for this? Is this going to be big enough? Is this fundable? Is this will I be the one that is this something that I have some kind of knowledge or advantage in that or is it not going to be that competitive because no one knows about this yet, or if I can be the first mover, I'll really be able to control the space, or maybe I can control this geography. It's there's a bunch of filters you have to put on something like that.
Right. And so when you were starting or thinking about starting Badger Mapping, was there some sort of testing you did to see if it fit the criteria, if it got through some of those filters, and if it was really a viable business?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. So I think that the trick to knowing that what you're doing makes sense is you find the end user, the person that is going to be using the product that you're trying to have it solve the problem that you're trying to solve, and talk to as many people like that as possible. Talk to the people that will be making the decision for that person, whether they get it or not. In the world of IT, at least, there's often, if you're selling to businesses, there's often many people involved in a decision. So you can't just talk to the end user. If you're me, my end user is a field salesperson. I can't just talk to the field salesperson. I also have to talk to the trainer of salespeople at a company, and the VP of sales, like the sales management, and the IT team. All these people are going to have input and thoughts, and you kind of got to get all gather all their thoughts and make sure you're solving a problem that's really a problem that's big enough that people are going to pay you for it. And the best way to find out if that's true is to ask them, to be like, hey, this is the thing we're building. We'd love your feedback on it, and we'd love to. I, I'd love I'd love to have you guys on as like an early beta test user. If you test this out for the next few months, would you sign now to buy it in 3 months once it's really fleshed out, assuming that we actually, are able to do this, and this that we're saying we're going to do? Would you pay for it? Would you sign to pay for this now? And the reason you'd want to do that is because once this thing is up and running, and a year from now it's going to cost 10 times as much, but you can lock in this much more reasonable price now while the thing's just getting started, because it's valuable to us that you're giving us your feedback. And you need to do that with a bunch of people to prove out, yes, this is actually a problem that people are willing to pay for if you can solve it, and they're willing to sign a piece of paper, putting their money where their mouth is.
I love that approach, because it's very easy for somebody in that situation, if you're just talking through it, for them to say, oh yeah, I'd be interested in that. I'd be your customer.
That's so cool.
But until you actually have them sign the paper, put some money down, that's when it becomes real. That's when they're actually willing to do it, because people are very supportive in words sometimes, but it's a different story when you're asking them to put their money on the line.
Absolutely. It's really easy to have happy ears and to have talked, so many companies, they talk to 5 people that, are going to be their user. They don't really even have a good feel for how many more people like that there are out there. And those 5 people are like, oh, that's really cool. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, that's cool. But that's not the same thing as saying, oh yeah, I'd sign a check for that. That's fantastic. I need this bad enough that I would part with money for it.
Exactly. So Steve, if anybody's listening to this and they want to learn more about you or learn more about Badger mapping, where are some resources online that they can find out more?
Well, more about me. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find. The company, just you can search our Badger Maps. We're easy to find on the web. If anybody knows any field salespeople that this might be useful for, just have them mention the Millennial Podcast here and to one of our customer success people, and they'll update them with a 2-month free trial of the thing, just so they can.
I love it.
Check it out and get a little bonus.
Well, thank you, Steve. I appreciate your time today, and it was a blast talking with you.
Yeah, this has been really fun, Brad. Thanks for having me.
Let's give it up for Steve Benson. What a guy. If you're still listening, you are exactly the type of person who I would love to have attend the first annual Launchpad Mastermind event. It's taking place on Saturday, December 2nd, here in the Cleveland area. It will truly be an event unlike any other. Attendees will experience a full day of masterminding on how to make 2018 the best year of our lives. Since it will be the first one ever, it will also be the most inexpensive, as I'm way undercharging for this type of growth event. You can get your ticket for under $100. As Warren Buffett once said, the best investment you can make is in yourself. So to learn more, go to millennialmm.com/launchpad. I hope to see you there.